Good old Slate. I'm going to leave that door open because it's kind of hot in here.
Okay. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm a little tired.
Yeah. Is that a result of Thanksgiving?
Yeah. So pre-Thanksgiving, Haley and I went to see my parents in Florida.
Okay.
And we spent a few days there, which was a lot of fun. However, Haley was, I don't know what it was. She was sick, but like it was really just a cough. She was coughing all the time.
Yeah.
And just,
I feel her pain.
yeah, just not a lot of sleeping. So, yeah, just a little tired, but otherwise good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you brought up Thanksgiving because I feel like that's what I want today's session to be about.
Okay.
It's Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Just because I was thinking about this and like, I don't know if you'll agree or not, but I feel like one of the biggest tropes of Thanksgiving or cliches rather, is that like everyone's yelling. It's just families arguing and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Would you ascribe to that or no?
When you get people together, I mean, proximity.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's high stress. You're trying to put on a big meal or, you know.
Totally. And so I thought it would be worthwhile to our legions of listeners to talk through Thanksgiving. But before we get started on that, I just want to thank our sponsor for today's session. This episode is sponsored by Dave.
Oh, okay.
So we thank him. And so Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Do I need to know about Dave?
That's all. I mean, that's all I got. It's just Dave.
Okay.
But a great sponsor. So
Okay.
we appreciate him. Maybe it's Dave LLC. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, so Thanksgiving I spent with Haley and her family in Hudson, Wisconsin. And that was very relaxing, very cool. But sometimes Thanksgiving can be very stressful. And
Like for you, or are you talking
Yep.
generally?
I think me and generally.
Right.
I have engaged with a lot of media.
Yeah.
Typically videos like on TikTok and stuff. The running joke is, okay, here's how you survive Thanksgiving. Or
Right.
like, there's like a couple different types of content that you see lots of people doing. And one of them is like a person being like, okay, getting ready for the onslaught of questions as to what I actually do with my life. Like, that's
Yeah.
a pretty common one. Or another one's like getting ready for the onslaught of questions as to why I'm not married yet.
Uh-huh.
You know? So I feel like there's just this general vibe that Thanksgiving can be contentious in some regard, or stressful.
Yeah.
So,
But how is it for you though? I mean,
Yeah.
because in therapy we wouldn't talk so much about the general masses of.
yeah, no, hey, Steve, keeping me honest. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. The shepherd of sessions. That's pretty good alliteration. Thanksgiving for me, like I said earlier, it is similar. Like I have a similar experience to the majority of people, I think, which is it's usually a little exhausting for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so. When I was in Florida with my parents, it's always nice to see them. However, it's just like I think personally, I get exhausted from. There's a lot of really big personalities in my family, and a lot of characters who are very much like, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling. That is like it, as opposed to like, hey, how's everyone else thinking? What's everyone else feeling like? So there's a lot of butting heads like all the time. And especially with my mom and my dad. And so it can get kind of exhausting to be like, sort of like refereeing that.
Oh, uh-huh.
And
You feel like you have to?
yeah,
Like
I
it's
do.
your job, like you're putting on the striped shirt and you're the one who's got to monitor and
I think
track
about that
and
a lot.
keep things in line.
Because a part of me is like, obviously that's not, no one's asking me
Right.
to do it.
Right.
So why do I feel compelled to do it? But to me personally, I'm like, well, what's the alternative? Just kind of go to my happy place and ignore it. Like, it's hard for me to not want to be like, hey, you're saying this because you believe it. That's okay. But this other person here, believe something else? This both okay? Could we just chill out for a second and let me read my newspaper like an old man in Florida? Yeah. I just feel like it's to do nothing would not be very productive or proactive. So I get sucked into at least making an attempt to like.
So, like when you're with your folks in Florida, is there? I mean, you talk about big personalities, and your mom and dad had professional lives at one time, and
Yeah.
identities, and
Yep.
you talked about scheduling time with your mom. At like
Yeah.
I call your people, have your people
Yeah.
call my people. But when you go down there, you feel like, okay, I've got to manage this environment,
Yes. Yep.
and if you don't manage it, what happens?
Well, it's gonna be itself regardless. That's
Right.
kind of the funny thing. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter what I do. Like
Yeah.
the environment is what the environment is. Typically, what happens is the first 2 days, I'm in a good mood. It's the weather's nice. It's not really bothering me.
Yeah.
But as the days wear on and I get more tired, that's when I start. Like I feel more agitated by it, and so I become more forward in terms of like, guys, can you knock this off? Like it's starting to bother me.
Do you think other people are getting agitated as well?
Yeah.
Like the first couple days are okay, and then
Yep.
we're starting to get under each other's skin a little bit.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is because, like, yeah, maybe I contribute to that. I never thought about that, but my parents obviously love each other tremendously, and that has always been on display. Like growing up, you could always see that they loved each other very much.
How do you see it?
Like gift giving.
Oh,
My parents give each other very thoughtful gifts.
oh, cool.
And I've always noticed that right off the bat. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I observe this about you. I know this is important to you. I went out and I found or made this thing that is reflective of that. And also, like, I've seen, like, when times are, like, really stressful or, like, really tough, they kind of step up for each other in a big way. But the flip side of that is, like, normal times, they're just, like, constantly butting heads, and like they're both really
Yeah.
stubborn, like confident, extroverted people. And it feel like if I could picture the Italian family dinner table kind of trope, that's sort of what it was always like. Just very loud, like a lot of emotions,
Okay.
arguing, not about like serious stuff, but like really dumb stuff. But like people digging in
Wow,
for their
okay.
side. So that it just gets exhausting after a while, to be, for example, if my dad, he loves to eat granola. He likes to eat granola. It's a normal thing. He has a tendency to chew with his mouth open. Drives my mom crazy. I feel like that's been something that's been going on for like 5 years. She's been trying to get him to stop. So there's always little jabs here and there. And it's just like, by day 3, I've kind of had it up to here. And I'm just like, I'll start throwing out
With the chewing or the interaction?
the interactions.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just so stressful.
Does Haley notice a difference in you? What does she say when she's there?
She's like, you're doing a great job, Alex. Like,
Oh, she's a fan, huh? So
yeah.
she
In the sense of like,
talks you down? Or?
yeah, like, I know this is tough. Like, hey, it's, it's funny, blah, 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 blah. She's very supportive and encouraging. And she likes spending time with them too. But it's probably challenging for her because she is much more introverted than I am. So to see this constant display of like forward kind of bluntness is probably like, she's like, whoa, conflict, whoa. So
Does she comment at all on how you're showing up? Like, does she notice a change in you when you're at home? Like, hey, you're different when you're around your parents, or
she has not said that, but I think she would, if she was sitting here right now, she'd be like, yeah, he definitely, I can tell he gets more and more aggravated as time goes on. And he does his best to keep it under control, but he gets exhausted by the end. That's what I think she would say.
yeah, okay,
So we spent a couple days with them, and we did a lot of fun stuff together. It's just also by the end of it, I'm just kind of like shaking my head like, oh my God, I can't wait to get out of here. And, from my perspective, I feel like that's a shared experience. the majority of people I grew up with had a similar experience.
Mm-hmm.
And what's so interesting is, so like I said, I spent actual Thanksgiving with Haley and her family.
Right.
And it was kind of the polar opposite.
Oh, uh-huh.
Yeah. Like everyone, like, I don't think there was a single argument. Everyone was just kind of talking, and there were some kids, and everyone was having fun with the kids. And it was just, it was just much more laid back. And I was like, this is like not a breath of fresh air, but I was like, this is nice. Just quiet. It just, I wanted to describe it as like farm life kind of. They like, her mom grew up in a really big family of 13 total kids, and they grew up on a farm. And I just get the vibe of like everything's pretty laid back, like conversation never really gets heated. It's just kind of casual stuff. So I was thinking to myself, well, this is nice. This is a nice change of pace.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always.
So do you take that experience, and do you then talk to Haley and say that, I want our life to be more like this one than that one, or this is what I like about this experience, and here's what I wish I saw more of in this environment, or how do you do that?
Yeah, I do. It's funny you ask, bring that up, because on top of that, I would say, I don't know when, maybe a week ago. You still got that phlegm stuff, huh? Just constant for you.
Yeah.
I feel for you, man. I had dinner with an old friend from high school. He was in town with his wife and his. They have a 18-month-old daughter, I believe.
Okay.
And so I went over to his house, his parents' house, where he grew up. His mom and his dad had us over for dinner, and then his sister was also there with her husband and their almost 2-year-old son.
Mm-hmm.
So it was and Haley and I went. So it was like a big family affair, right? There were 8 of us there. And it was such a pleasant experience. And at the end, as we left, Haley made a comment. She's like, this is what I want our family to be like. It was a very, like, the kids got loud, but no one got impatient with them. No one yelled at them. It just was a very, like, loving, you just felt like there was love in the room. And it was a great feeling. And Haley and I both agree, like, that's the kind of environment we want to create. One thing that's going to be challenging for me is I grew up in a very, obviously a very loving household, but a pretty impatient one. And that is something that I still struggle with, is this idea of like being patient, especially around kids. And, I think I mentioned this in an earlier session, is like, you were allowed to be a kid up until you were annoying your parents. And then they were like, okay, now I'm annoyed. You stop. Like, it doesn't matter. You're being a child. Like, stop. Be an adult. So I'm kind of always trying to keep that in check, but I want to create an environment like what I witnessed over Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Cool.
Because it just seems so much more pleasant.
Yeah. Good things to shoot for.
Yeah. And Haley's a good partner for that because she's extremely patient. And I mentioned this in a previous session too. Like, it's been eye-opening to be exposed to that. And I'm starting to notice it more, this behavior, especially around children, where it's like they're being annoying, but the parent isn't like getting frustrated. They're just like, oh, of course this child is doing it. It's a child. It has needs.
Right.
And I don't need to yell at it. I can just guide it and we can move on.
Yep.
As opposed to, I kind of grew up in more of an environment where it was like, stop doing, like, very kind of more forceful of like, keep it under control.
Yeah.
So all this stuff comes up around Thanksgiving, holiday season for me. And I think we've kind of touched upon it, but like,
right.
I feel a little guilty that I carry a lot of, I don't know how you would describe it, like some angst maybe, or some like, frustration with my family. And it just always rears its head around the holidays, I think. But I do like spending time with them. It's just after a couple days.
So like, is this, does it rise to the level of I need to talk to my folks about this because this is something, I'm harboring ill will, or I wish they could have done better with patients or didn't raise their voice. I mean, does it rise to that level, or?
It rises to the level. I think you had made a comment. You're like, I think every person should have conversations with their parents if they're still alive.
Yeah.
And I think I said something similar, but my reaction internally was like, absolutely. However, I personally couldn't do it because it would be too triggering for me. I'd end up like yelling at
to have
them.
that conversation.
Yeah, I'd be like, I don't have the patience to like go through the steps of them being like, well, that wasn't what happened. Your experience is wrong. This is what actually happened. So you don't need to be talking to us about anything. Like, I could only sustain that for so long before I'd be like, would just be like, here are all the reasons I'm upset with you. Take it or leave it, because I'm not sick of sugarcoating it for you guys. And I don't like that, right? I'd love to be more like, I think the Thanksgiving holiday always leaves me wishing that I could be more at peace with the past and just be like, it wasn't personal. It's just people being people, being limited by their family of origin, kind of their experiences growing up and what they were given when they were kids, emotionally and stuff like that. Like, that stuff just gets passed down, and it's not personal, but it's hard for me. And
so how do you get there? I mean, is
Dr. Steve, that is why you got the PhD, my friend.
But is it an interest of yours to get there, or is it enough to say, hey, well, I'm going down to visit my folks. I only have to put in 4 days, and then I just have to be on my best behavior. Then I can get out of here.
Yeah. I don't know. The latter probably seems more like the easy way. The latter of like, oh, I just got to put in my 4 days and then I'm out. That's the easy way of doing it. And a part of me wonders if like the people listening, if like that's the standard, right? Because again, everything I see in media, in like society, and like film, movies, it speaks to what you just said, right?
Yeah,
Which
you
is
got to get through.
Just got to survive.
Yeah.
And I feel like every alcohol company, their commercials for the holidays is like, hey, like, we'll get you through it.
We're there for you.
Yeah. But I personally know deep down, like authentic Alex, the right thing to do, what I would like to do is the former, which is to like work through it and talk through it. To quote the great Kylo Ren, I know what I have to do, I just don't have the strength to do it, or some variation of that. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. I think if people can develop a different kind of relationship with their folks around things like that, like things we wish we had done, things we wish we had had.
Yeah.
And be more at peace with, hey, they were doing the best that they could, And I know that there are parents out there who, in some instances, aren't doing the best that they could because of, for whatever reason, or there was abuse or something like that. But there's probably most people in the world probably have irritations or complaints or concerns with their parents, or preferences that didn't get met, and then being able to get to a point in your relationship with your folks to say they're trying to figure this out just the way I would. And I think some of that comes when you become a parent yourself. If that's part of your pathway, and you look and you go, oh, it's a little harder than I thought it was going to be.
Yep.
And
that perspective.
Yeah.
I want that piece, seems cool. It's tough for me, honestly. That is something that I like to describe myself as a pretty reasonable guy, and like I can, kind of put my emotions aside and be reasonable. Well,
yeah.
Be more open-minded about, okay, this isn't all about me and how I feel. But like, that's one subject where it's really tricky for me. It's just like it's a sensitive nerve. Like, I just got a chip on my shoulder, I guess is another way of describing it. And it's tough for me.
I think it all changes when you have kids of your own, and you see from a different vantage point. And if you don't have kids, that's just an experience you don't have as easy an access to, I guess. But having kids and knowing your kid a certain way, and then interacting with your parents around their grandchild, your child. That's a fun dynamic as well, because your folks will have ideas about how to raise your kid,
Yep.
and you have ideas, and Haley's got her ideas, and all that comes together.
Yeah.
And provides a lot of opportunity for discussion or for judgment or for, conflict. So
It has been interesting too, just like as Haley and I have talked about our, seedlings of ideas for family planning, right? And how we want to like, and how we view kids and stuff like that. When we have those conversations around my mom in particular, it's very illuminating because like Haley is very much just loves babies, just big fan of babies. And my mom finds that so fascinating. And we were talking about it once how, so Haley's mom has this thing where she loves the smell of newborn babies, which I guess that's a thing.
Yeah.
It's the smell of newborn babies is...
you can get a whole book of scratch and sniff stickers like that.
I made the joke at Thanksgiving. I was like, I'm going to get you a car freshener. I'm going to find one that's
baby.
the newborn baby smell. But anyway, we're telling my mom this. She was like, really? And Haley was like, yeah, my mom just will hold babies for an hour. And my mom started laughing. She's like, wow, yeah, that's kind of like the opposite of your father and I, Alex, where we were basically like handing you guys off as quickly as we could. And I was like, that's probably reflective of the just difference. I know my parents love me without a doubt, but I think they were balancing me with like stuff that they like to do in their careers, right? And I probably for a long period of time was like, and still am, a source of love and joy, and they're so proud of me, but also was like, God, this thing's so annoying.
But you've said on a number of times today, I know my parents love me with beyond a shadow of a doubt or without a doubt. How do you know how are there no doubts there? How do you know that? I'm not saying I don't believe you, but I'd like to know how you got to that place. How do you know that they love you?
Because they tell me, and they, when it comes down to it, they support me, maybe begrudgingly, right? Maybe it takes them a really long time to come around, but they always end up supporting me. And I sometimes get annoyed by like how much effort I have to put in to like convince them, like, hey, what I'm doing is smart. Just have some faith in me. But they eventually come around and they're like, okay, yeah, you were right. Like, we're proud of you. Like, you're doing awesome stuff. This is so great.
Yeah.
For example, the podcast that came up when I was in Florida, and my mom, my dad, and my aunt had all listened to it. Which I thought was interesting, and they were all talking about why they liked it. And this is classic my mom, but she was going into all the reasons about why the podcast was good, how we could make it better, what she liked about you. She'd listened to like half of one episode.
Okay.
But that was enough for her to develop all of these, like, these is what you got to do, Alex. But it's a great example of like, they weren't upset. Or they weren't like, I can't believe you're doing this. This is going to hurt you in the long run. You're being too vulnerable, at the public. They liked it. And my aunt especially was like, I think it's, she kind of spoke to the core of why I want to do this podcast and why we're doing this podcast.
Yeah.
She was like, I had never, ever thought about therapy ever. It just seemed so scary. And listening to you talk about it, I just had never considered that it could be something more like wellness, like going to the gym or brushing your teeth or doing yoga or something like that. So that was cool. But those are the instances where like, I know they love me. And when I need them most, they will be there. They've always been there. They've lectured me beforehand. But, I think that's where I get annoyed. It's like when I need them most, it's like, okay, we'll give you the love, but you're going to get a lecture first. You got to pay the toll.
Comes at a price.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So that's how I know. That's how I know that they love me. And I'm still kind of frustrated by them. That's just part of being a human, I suppose.
Yeah, and they're probably somewhere talking right now about how they're frustrated with you.
Yeah. Yes. Which there's a part of me that's like, hey, guys, you don't know, not to sound arrogant, but it's like, you don't know how good you've got it in terms of me being like open-minded and even keeled to like what you guys need and how you guys act. Like I would like to think around my family, I am extremely accommodating.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that is kind of at the source of the frustration.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I would love for this accommodation to be reciprocated a little bit every once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But would they even know what you're talking about if you said that to them?
Probably not, no.
Yeah. Would you know what it would look like to be reciprocated?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
What would it look like?
It would look like, hey, Alex, like, what's going on in your life? Like, what are you excited about? Like, just tell us what's going on in your life. Like, we want to hear from you.
They'd reach out more. They'd initiate more.
Yeah, and even usually when they do initiate, it's like they initiate to like talk to me about stuff, right? Like what's going well in their life, what's not going well in their life, like what they're annoyed by. And, you know, if I bring something up, it'll be like, okay, here's what I think about that. Mm-hmm. You know, as opposed to like, just talk. Like, I want to, you know, I love to share what I'm doing, but it's usually kind of like met with a wave of like, well, here's what, you know, that reminds me of this that I'm experiencing and blah, blah, blah. They're just very like, you know, it's not that they're selfish, right? They're not, but they love to talk about what's going, you know, they're extroverted.
Yeah.
And they're very strong personalities. So to me, it looks like accommodating to me is like, okay, I understand how this person is and what brings them joy. I'm going to give them a little bit of that, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I would love to see that from all people. But yeah.
Yeah, but we're talking about your folks right now. So that's the cutting edge in your relationship with them, is that sometimes it feels like they're not as willing or able, I don't know which of those, to sit with or interested to just sit with understanding you and hearing your perspective without interjecting their own kind of take on things.
Correct. Yeah. Yep. I'd be curious, like, I don't even know if they're that interested in like what I do or what I like or what I don't like. Uh-huh. Like, I don't know if they're curious about it. I know that when I do things, when I create videos that are like go viral or, you know, they love that. Uh-huh. You know, they love, oh, this was so funny, Alex. You know, they're very kind of results driven people.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And they're quick to sell it. You know, when I do have victories, they're quick to celebrate with me. Like,
yeah.
Oh, this is cool what you did. This is really impressive. Congratulations. Right. But, you know, sometimes I wonder, like, do they find it interesting? Maybe they don't. I don't know. Yeah.
But it also sounds like it's important to you that they do find it interesting, that there's a degree of you wanting their approval. Like, what you're doing, Alex, is worthwhile. You know, it may not be the path that your mom and I took, your dad and I took, but what you're doing is making a contribution. And
I think what would be the most fulfilling to me is to hear something along the lines of like, you seem really happy. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Like, you get really excited when you talk about this. That's super cool. Mm-hmm. Like, you seem to have found something you're passionate about. That's so hard to do in life. Keep going. You can do it. You know?
Yeah, that's what you'd like to hear.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Not like, oh, this is so personally interesting to me. I find this interesting. Like, no, I don't need to hear that.
Right.
I would love to hear, man, you're doing all this crazy cool stuff. You're on this incredible journey. I know it's really hard, but you're doing a great job. We're proud of you. Keep going.
Yeah. That the confidence is there, the backing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if there's not total agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some kind of like faith of like encouragement and, or just like checking in. Like,
so if they're listening to this right now,
yeah,
should they pick up the phone and check in with you, or would you like that? Would you like them to say, "Hey, well, we do all those things. We do have."
I would love for them to reach out and be like, "Hey, we heard this," and I wouldn't want them to reach out and be mad and like yell and be like, "I can't believe you said all those things," right? Mm-hmm. I'd love for it to be more like, "Hey, let's talk about this," like. And then have a conversation about it. But it would be awesome if my parents called and were just like, hey, what's been going on? Like, what have you been doing? I'm curious. You know, been thinking about you. and just kind of,
But I'm thinking that a conversation like this, public as it is,
yeah,
if they were to hear it, they would maybe call and express some concern, like, "Hey, you don't think we have your back? You don't think
Yeah.
is that what we're hearing? Are we hearing you correctly, or
yeah,
you'd like us to take more of an interest in your life? Maybe you think we're a little self-centered, or
yeah." What was the question in there? Was there one?
part of the question is, would you want them to call
I would totally be down to have a
and say-
conversation about it.
and say, really, how do you look at it? How do
Yeah.
you view us? Because, okay, you said that love is undeniable.
Yeah.
We agree with that. You know,
Yep.
like I'm trying to channel your inner mom and dad. Yeah, but what, we're not supportive enough, or what,
Uh-huh.
you need us to be bigger cheerleaders. You
Yep.
need us to be more affirming of your choices. And
Yeah, I would totally be down to have that conversation. But I get a little sensitive to this idea of like hearing him say, "What do you like need us to do?" Right? Because I don't want it to seem like I'm needy. Like I don't want to feel like I'm needy. I
Yeah.
don't want to feel like what I'm asking for is like, okay, so what is it that you just tell us what you want and we'll do it? You know, I don't want it to. I don't want to feel like it's burdensome. But I'd love to have a conversation because obviously, too, at the end of the day, that's a two-way street.
mm-hmm.
Like I could call my parents and be like, "Hey, you know, what have you been up to?" And typically I do. You know, I call them once a week and I check in and I say, "Hey, what's new?" Blah blah blah. But yeah, I don't want to. Like, I hope I don't come across as like a just a kind of a needy person. Rather, these are the kinds of things that Thanksgiving make me confront. The holidays make me confront all of these things.
Yeah, I imagine they do that to a lot of people as well.
Yeah.
And the question is, do you have interest in pursuing it in ways that you haven't before?
Yeah. No, like I interpret that question as like, so what are you going to do about it, Alex?
Exactly.
And yeah, it's very easy to sit on a podcast in front of millions of people and complain about problems. It's a lot harder to get up on the horse and handle it.
Millions of people.
Millions of people. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the where the rubber hits the road in
Yep.
therapy, right? You can be in this space and you can be talking about things you want to see or changes you want to make, and ultimately it comes down to you,
Yeah.
not your therapist. You going out and saying, okay, I'm gonna ask different questions. I'm gonna create different space for conversations.
When you do your work with couples,
Yeah.
do you see a lot of conflict that like has origins with their family structures?
Sure.
Yeah. And does your work sometimes require them to talk to their parents ever? Is that ever a thing that pops up?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I usually don't spend a ton of time going back in time though.
Okay.
Like, so, I mean, that's if I know the answer to why I do what I do, is it helpful in me changing the present? Sometimes it is. Sometimes just knowing the answer is not enough, though. You still have to venture out and do something different.
Yeah.
So if you're prone to defensiveness, it may not matter that you get all these answers to your questions about why you show up in relationships defensively. Change the defensiveness. So you can go and you can search out, okay, there's all these reasons, but now what do I do with it?
Yeah.
I don't think it's harmful necessarily to postulate some reasons, but when we're talking about human behavior, we're talking about, hundreds of different things that go into how you and I show up at a moment in time. Did I have a good night's sleep? Did I eat breakfast? Did I have a fight with my partner on the way out this morning? Did somebody cut me off? Am I running late? And then I sit down here and
Yeah.
what's all contributing? It's usually not just I was raised by toxic parents and now I've got to distance myself from them. Sometimes I think we go too easily to the family of origin and say, this is the reason why you're the way you are. And there's no doubt our family interaction is the way we were raised. They all contribute.
So on that note, my mom really enjoys you as a co-host.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly why.
I give her a pass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
She was like, I like how he kind of, he pushes back on you a little bit. Like if you say something, he's like, well, no, that might not be it, Alex. And I was just thinking, and it's funny because when I first told her that I was going to therapy, she's really, really, this was when I was like 19. She was very reluctant about it. She was like, this is not a good idea. I don't think you should do this. And I think a lot of it was fear that, she has this vision of therapists in their head where they just like conspire against the patient's parents, like they're.
That's not a paranoid.
Yeah.
That's a real kind of thing.
Yeah. But I don't necessarily think that either of those things are true. Like, right? It's not.
What do you mean?
I don't think that it's like, okay, the therapist and the patient are working together against the parent. And I also don't think that makes it okay to not, like, there's no value in talking about family of origin.
Yeah, I'm not saying that either.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it has its limitations.
Sure.
So understanding is one thing, being able to understand how you show up and what contributed to how you show up today. But if it's the end all be all and you end the work at, I've looked at how whacked my family is, then I think you're missing an opportunity.
Yeah.
Because the reality is everybody's family is a little kooky.
No, totally. That's what my mom would always say that.
Okay.
Alex, every family has got its stuff.
She
and
needs
it's true.
She needs to sponsor the show.
She'd have to listen to a few more episodes, I feel like. To the one she didn't even remember which episode she listened to. She's like, I watched it. I didn't listen to it. I watched it.
Wow, the whole episodes are up somewhere to watch?
Yeah, they're all on YouTube. You didn't know that?
No.
Yeah. That's what this is for.
I'm like Jack Palance.
I don't get that reference.
You know who Jack Palance is? He's an old-timey Westerns kind of actor. He never watched any of the movies he ever starred.
Oh, really?
In. Yeah.
That's probably very healthy. Like,
no, I don't know if it's healthy or not.
That's what it would be so tough to do, to be judged by that big of an audience all of the time.
I'm trying real hard when I have to clear my throat or cough to go off camera, but I'm being caught every time.
Yeah, there's no just go with it. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is the holidays for me, and that's what the holidays. It drums up a lot of emotional energy. But I agree with you too. I think for people listening, like the process of therapy for me, and this is personal. This isn't for everyone. I like talking about it and identifying it first, because sometimes just talking about it is healing, right? And just hearing someone be like, "Hey, I hear it. I hear you." Like, that sounds tough. That can be enough of a great first step to then lead to the second step of like, okay, so what's the plan?
Yeah, what do I do about it?
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
And sometimes it takes me a long time, as made evident by this episode, to heal and to get to that point where it's like, okay, I'm ready for action, right? Because even now, after the many, many years of therapy that I've done, this idea of like, you kind of challenging me in the sense of like, okay, what would be
What do you do with it?
Yeah. That to me is intimidating, and it makes me uncomfortable, but that's part of the process, I suppose. And
the thing is about you is it feels to me like you've got parents who understand that you may have a different view of the world or a different way of seeing things, and so if they push back, they, "Oh, Alex, that didn't happen that way," but my guess is that if you held your ground and said, "Well, this is my experience," that they at some point would be able to go, "Okay, we raised him to be an independent thinker. We raised him to be able to quote unquote stand up to us. We raised him to think and to use his mind and to,
I would agree too. It just might get a little bumpy up until that point.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, I think that is something for me to think about as the holidays continue. We got we got a month left of holiday.
Yep.
Ness. And so it will give me something to think about. But I think this is a good place to wind down. So
yeah.
Hope everyone thrived this Thanksgiving season, and I hope they continue to thrive this holiday season. And we would like to thank our sponsor, Dave, for this week's episode. Thank you.
Don't mean to be discourteous today, but I have all kinds of questions. So
Yeah, don't we all? That is just a black hole, that Dave. A lot of questions to be answered. And we will collectively see you next week. So
all right, have a good one.
have a good one. Stay happy. Oh.